Welcome back to the deep dive. And if you can feel that static electricity just crackling through the air, it's because we are here. The glittering, high-stakes conclusion of the 2025 Formula One season in Abu Dhabi.
We are indeed. We've just had the post-qualifying session, and the tension at Yas Marina is, well, it's more than palpable. It's almost overwhelming.
It's amplified 1,000 times by the way the grid has been set. It's just spectacular.
It is. We've got a genuine three-way shootout for the World Drivers' Championship, the WDC. And these Q3 results, they aren't just data points. They're strategic weapons.
Every single move, every tenth of a second in that qualifying session is going to dictate the strategic war we see on Sunday.
Absolutely.
And that's our mission today, a proper deep dive. We're not just going to read you the times. We are dissecting the official results. We're tearing apart the journalist reports. And crucially, we're sifting through all that unfiltered, very anxious chatter from the fans online.
We really want to understand where this championship is actually going to be won or lost.
Exactly. And for you listening in, we are providing the definitive shortcut to understanding the entire strategic landscape of this final massive decider.
We need to unpack these grid positions, define the point scenarios down to the single digit, and analyze the psychological warfare that Max Verstappen has already started.
He really has, hasn't he? So let's cut straight to it. The central burning question hanging over the whole paddock. Max Verstappen secured pole, but with the two McLarens, the Orange Army parked right behind him in P2 and P3.
A sea of orange in his mirrors.
Is this championship actually Lando Norris's to lose? He has the lead, but can he hold off the tactical mind games?
Look, based on the raw numbers, Norris is absolutely in the driving seat. Starting P2 is an enormous advantage.
It's huge.
But Max's performance, particularly the margin of that pole lap, it wasn't just a fast time, it was an imposing statement. It's him saying, I am the pace setter, and I will now set the speed of this race.
That sets the scene perfectly. So let's look at those results. It's like a Hollywood script, isn't it? The three title contenders occupy the entire front three grid spots. Max Verstappen takes pole on the Red Bull, Lando Norris, P2, and Oscar Piastri, P3.
You couldn't write it better.
Okay, let's unpack the raw data from that crucial Q3 session, the final top 10 shootout. The margins were, they were ridiculously tight, especially between the two orange cars.
They were. But Max's advantage, given the pressure, it feels huge.
It really does.
And the first thing you have to appreciate is the track evolution. Yas Marina, it just changes so dramatically as the sun sets and the temperatures fall.
The track gets rubbered in, grip improves.
Exactly. Times just tumble throughout the session. We saw drivers pushing harder and harder, but Max Verstappen, well, as often happens, he just found a gear nobody else had. He was operating on another level.
So let's talk numbers. Max Verstappen takes P1, a phenomenal time of 1.22.207. And if we look closely at that, it reveals a pretty significant gap.
It does. 0.201 seconds to Lando Norris in P2. In a modern F1 title decider, a 2/10 margin is colossal. It's a lifetime.
And this is where his dominance really shines through, isn't it? That sense of total control.
Spot on. Because both of Verstappen's flying laps in Q3, both of them were individually fast enough for pole position.
Right. So he didn't just fluke one lap.
Not at all. He set a blinding time on his first run, effectively putting it out of reach. And then he went out and improved on his second run, shaving off nearly another 10th.
That's just an imposing, consistent performance. It suggests he wasn't relying on, getting the perfect toe or anything. It was just raw pace.
Raw pace and abundance. It's drawing a lot of parallels from fans to his high-pressure drive here back in 2021.
Okay, let's move to the McLaren duo. Lando Norris, P2, with a 1.22.408. Still on the front row, which is arguably the most critical position he could have secured.
It is. Interestingly, he was almost half a second off Max after those first runs, but he managed to drastically improve. He halved that deficit on his final attempt.
And that ability to find time under the most intense pressure. That's why he has the championship lead, isn't it?
Precisely. He dug deep and he maximized the lap when it really counted. But what's fascinating is the sheer proximity of his teammate, Oscar Piastri, in P3.
Oh, this is so close. Piastri clocked a 1.22.437.
It's ridiculously close.
I'm looking at the numbers here. Piastri was edged out by Norris by only 0.029 seconds. That's less than 0.03 of a second.
It's nothing. It's the difference between a front-row lockout and Piastri starting behind his rival, and that micro-margin is going to weigh so heavily on McLaren's strategy calls tomorrow.
It absolutely will. But Piastri does get some bragging rights, doesn't he?
He does. A key performance indicator. He recorded the fastest final sector of the track.
And for anyone who doesn't know, that final sector at Yas Marina is slow, it's technical, full of traction zones.
Exactly. The fact that the McLaren is supreme in that area suggests that car is just brilliantly tuned for tire management for those late race corner exits, and that could be hugely important for setting up overtakes, especially if it turns into a tire degradation battle.
Okay, let's move just behind the main protagonists. We hit this crucial midfield blockade. George Russell starts in P4, 0.438 seconds off pole.
And George looked early on in the session like he could be a serious potential spoiler, a real interloper who could split the front three.
But Q3 just seemed to slip away from him a little bit.
It was a messy session for him. Journalist reports and driver feedback suggest the Mercedes team was struggling to hit that perfect tire temperature window for the final runs.
And Russell himself had a big moment, didn't he? You can see it in the highlights.
Oh, a massive slide, right up against the barriers on his final push. It was a beautiful save. To be fair, he prevented a crash.
But it shows he was pushing past the absolute limit to try and bridge that gap.
And ultimately, he fell short of the top three. Still, P4 is a prime position to be involved in the action right from the start.
Just behind him, we have Charles Leclerc in P5. And he truly, as the reports say, dragged the Ferrari into that position. It sounded like a physically and mentally taxing session.
You're right to use the word dragged. Leclerc's Ferrari looked visibly difficult to handle. It was twitchy under braking, prone to snap oversteer.
He was very candid on the radio, wasn't he?
Incredibly, he said he was surprised to get through Q2 because he was, and I quote, driving like rallying.
Wow. That kind of comment just underscores how much raw talent and aggressive input he had to use to pull that car into P5.
It suggests the Ferrari setup is a bit compromised. They've probably traded some qualifying speed for potential race pace, but still, P5 is a strong starting point for them.
And rounding out that top six, the anchor of the chase pack, Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin. P6 is a great end of the season for him.
It is, but that positioning, it sets up the strategic nightmare that Max Verstappen wants to create.
The potential for a long DRS train with Alonso at the head of it.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, Alonso's position is arguably the most strategically critical non-championship car on the entire grid.
He's a master of racecraft, of pace management.
If he gets a good launch, P4, P5, and P6 could rapidly become a solid, tight blockade. And a DRS train, where all the cars get that drag reduction, it just nullifies the speed advantage.
Which allows the group to catch up to the leaders.
Which, as we'll get into, is exactly the tactical scenario Max Verstappen is desperately hoping for.
Let's look a little further down the order because there are some really impressive results for younger or less established drivers who really got the most out of their machinery.
There really are. Gabriel Bortoleto from Kick Sauber managed P7. A genuinely fantastic result for him and the team.
Proving he can deliver under pressure. Then Esteban Ocon is P8 for Haas, and then we have the two Red Bull affiliates.
Isaac Hadjar, who is heavily tipped for a promotion next year, is P9 for Racing Bulls. And his qualifying performance is precisely why he's being considered for that Red Bull seat.
He wasn't just there, he was competitive.
He ended Q2 in P6, showcasing phenomenal one-lap pace, and then settled for P9. These young drivers are demonstrating that this pressure cooker environment can actually bring out the best in the rest of the field.
Now, the final driver in the top 10 is Yuki Tsunoda in P10. But he didn't actually set a representative Q3 time, did he? His lap got deleted.
He did not. And his situation is complex and entirely tactical.
So what was the reasoning there?
His final Q3 lap time was deleted for an infraction at turn 1, exceeding track limits. But the true importance of his participation wasn't about the time he set.
It was about that first run.
Exactly. On his first Q3 run, the team explicitly used him. Red Bull deployed Tsunoda to give Max Verstappen a crucial slipstream, a tow, down that long second back straight.
So he was a sacrificial lamb, really, securing P10 but serving a much greater tactical purpose for the team leader.
Absolutely. He was a high-speed windbreak for Max. It's a classic example of explicit team play, and it perfectly sets us up for our next segment on the championship stakes, because Red Bull is already executing a multi-car strategy before the lights have even gone out.
The stakes just could not be higher. This final day.
Yeah.
It feels exactly like that high-drama Lewis Hamilton versus Nico Rosberg comparison we've seen before.
It really does. The title is going to be decided by the minute-to-minute positioning of these two rivals on the final day, not just by raw speed alone.
The atmosphere is just thick with anticipation. Lando Norris is in the strongest statistical position, leading by 12 points. And that P2 grid slot is absolute gold dust right now.
It puts him ahead of his immediate title rival, Verstappen, in a straight fight into turn 1. And breaking down the specific point scenarios helps us understand just how much that grid position dictates the strategy.
They'll be calculating every single potential outcome, won't they?
Yeah.
Factoring in fastest lap, everything. So let's start with Lando's magic number. He leads by 12 points. What's the guaranteed title scenario for him, regardless of what Max or Oscar do?
It's simple, really. Lando Norris will be champion if he finishes on the podium. P1, P2, or P3.
Any of those three results, the title is his. Period.
That is an incredibly robust position to be in, starting P2. If he just maintains his starting spot, he wins. As fans online were quick to point out, he's in a solid position. It's not even funny.
Which brings its own pressure, of course, but also confidence. Now, Max Verstappen's path is, well, it's treacherous.
He needs a combination of two things. First, he has to win the race, securing 25 points. And secondly, he needs Lando to finish P4 or lower.
And the maths here is just unbelievably tight. It's a perfect summation of why F1 is so dramatic.
It is. So if Max wins, he brings his season total to 421 points. If Lando finishes P4, he collects 12 points, bringing his total to 420 points.
So Max wins the World Championship by a single agonizing point.
1 point. Which is why he needs Russell or Leclerc or Alonso, any two cars, to finish between him and Lando. That's why P4, P5, and P6 are not just interesting, they're existentially critical to Max's hopes.
And we absolutely cannot forget Oscar Piastri, the definitive long shot.
Piastri needs a miracle. He has to win the race, and he needs Norris to finish P6 or lower to take the WDC.
Which is interesting because if Piastri were to take P1, Lando would only need to finish P5 or P6. It actually eases the pressure on Norris slightly.
Ironically, yes, unless Lando drops way down the order. And this is the inherent complication for McLaren. Their two drivers need different outcomes.
But their shared immediate goal is stability. Keep Max behind Lando.
Exactly.
Given that Max needs those external cars to jump Lando, the fan consensus online is that Verstappen will attempt the most intricate, high-risk strategic play of his career.
They've already dubbed it the Max Master or Maxtermind plan.
So what is it?
It's the strategy of winning the race in the slowest possible manner.
Right. He can't just pull a 10-second gap and cruise.
No. His core tactic has to be to actively manipulate the time gap to P4 to Russell and P5 Leclerc in that opening stint. He needs to keep them right in his mirrors within a pit stop window of Norris and himself.
Let's get technical for a moment. So he goes slow, keeps everyone bunched up, and lets Russell and Leclerc pit first. What's the desired outcome of that?
He's facilitating the undercut.
Explain that for us.
The undercut is when a car pits early for fresh tires, uses the extreme pace advantage of that new rubber for a lap or two, and manages to jump a rival who stayed out longer. By driving slowly, Max keeps P4 and P5 close enough to execute a devastating undercut attempt on Lando.
So he goes slow, Russell and Leclerc pit, they put on fresh tires and start flying. Max then pits. But the crucial part is Lando's pit stop.
Precisely. Max wants to pit after them, but he wants Lando to be delayed even further. If Max can use his front tires to exit the pits ahead of Russell and Leclerc, that places those two rivals in a prime position to attack Lando when the McLaren pit wall finally calls him in.
And the ultimate goal is for Lando to exit the pits behind that traffic, behind Russell and Leclerc.
And if Lando drops to P4 or P5, Max can win the title, even if he only manages to finish P2 in the race.
That's the critical subtlety. It's not just about him winning, it's about Lando losing positions. Fans noted how unusually slow and measured Max was in his interviews, suggesting he has a plan in mind.
But this is a monumental gamble. The pitfall of being too clever with the pace is risking his own P1 position.
Of course.
If he slows down too much, his own tires might drop out of their optimal temperature window. He could be vulnerable to a sudden attack from Lando. He could compromise his own race later on.
As one fan put it, he would kick himself if he tried to be too clever, then finish second with Lando in fourth due to some silliness.
It's an incredibly delicate balancing act. He's committed to doing whatever he can to keep Norris in traffic. It's an aggressive, almost cynical strategy. He's maximizing his impact on the cars behind him rather than his own gap.
And if Max is going to pull off this grand plan, he needs help. And we saw Red Bull being absolutely explicit with their team play in qualifying.
They are fully committed to using every single tool they have. The strategy is shifting from subtle pace management to overt team orders.
Let's circle back to Yuki Tsunoda. He didn't set a proper Q3 time, but Red Bull used him incredibly effectively to give Max that massive slipstream.
That toe was a calculated tactical masterstroke. Tsunoda creates a vacuum of low pressure behind him, which significantly reduces the drag on Max's car.
So he just carries higher straight line speed.
Much higher. We can estimate that toe saved Max between 0.15 and zero point 0.2 seconds on that straight alone, when the final pole margin was 0.201 seconds.
That toe was decisive.
It was. And the irony, as fans noted, is that Red Bull was playing team tactics using the driver they effectively demoted. It just highlights how ruthless and focused they are.
And the fan speculation is that Tsunoda, starting P10, and Hajar, starting P9, might be used again during the race itself.
The theory is that those two could form a highly disruptive secondary DRS train after the first stint. The hope would be to hold up Lando if he exits the pits behind them.
A Checo-like performance by Yuki to hold Norris, as one fan suggested.
It's a great narrative, but I think experts doubt its practical effectiveness. The McLarens are strong on tire life. If they pit for fresh rubber, the pace difference would be so large that Tsunoda or Hajar probably couldn't hold them up for more than a single lap.
So it's a low-percentage tactic.
But the mere fact that Red Bull has two cars there, ready to be deployed, shows their commitment to this multi-car strategy.
Okay, let's talk about the internal dynamic at McLaren. This is perhaps the most volatile and unpredictable factor in the whole race.
Lando Norris P2, Oscar Piastri P3. They are teammates, rivals, and co-championship contenders. The tension must be immense.
It's the toughest call for the McLaren pit wall, and Piastri's comments after qualifying indicate he is certainly going for it.
He said he's still focused on any potential possibilities of winning the championship, not on playing defensive. He does not sound like a driver willing to accept being a number two.
And why should he? While Norris has the lead, modern F1 drivers operate under a completely different paradigm now.
Fans are nervous about another strategy screw-up from McLaren, recalling past errors. And there's widespread speculation that the team will give Piastri the look of "don't try anything" to protect Lando's position.
Yeah, it brings up that whole question of legacy, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Accepting a number two status like, say, Weber at Red Bull. Does that even exist anymore?
I think the fan sentiment is vehemently against that idea. One comment I saw said, "With modern F1 fans, there is nothing legacy. Your legacy is what you did last race, and that's about it, lol."
So these drivers are focused on maximizing their own result, their own brand value.
Exactly. For Piastri, making a statement that he will fight for P1 defines his own competitive image. McLaren needs to manage that fine line perfectly.
So if Piastri challenges Lando into turn one, it might be the right decision for him, but it instantly hands Verstappen a strategic gift.
That's the risk. He could successfully pass Norris, but in doing so, allows Max to build the strategic gap he needs to P4, inadvertently setting up the very undercut that could cost his team the championship.
And then there's the Alonso factor at P6. The highly experienced driver, positioned perfectly to be a crucial, perhaps adversarial piece of this chess game.
The fan concern is that he could intentionally back up the pack to create that massive DRS train we talked about.
He's a known master of racecraft and manipulation.
If he creates that train, it would compress the gaps, giving the front runners, specifically Verstappen, the pit stop window to execute that slow driving plan. He can turn P6 into an anchor position.
And we've seen examples of this that fuel the fan theories that he has a vendetta, or at least a tactical preference, to help Red Bull and hurt McLaren.
Yes. Fans are referencing the recent example where Alonso hurt McLaren at Qatar, and even more recently where he backed up the others in the last race.
The anecdote is that he deliberately drove slowly enough to allow Norris to exit the pit lane just ahead of him.
And then, as soon as Norris was safely clear, Alonso sped up by 1s per lap right after that.
Fans are calling that totally blatant and highly strategic.
It shows his willingness to use his position to affect the outcome for his rivals. Whether he's explicitly aiding Max or just maximizing the chaos to benefit Aston Martin, his positioning at P6 means he is a variable thing Max can certainly try to weaponize.
Right, let's shift focus for a bit, because while the title fight is dominating the narrative, there was massive drama further down the grid. We absolutely have to talk about Lewis Hamilton's qualifying.
It was an exceptionally rough day for the 7-time champion, a really difficult one.
A truly miserable day that continued a worrying trend for him. It was his third consecutive Q1 knockout. He'll start P16 right in the thick of it.
And he ended up 0.231 seconds behind his teammate Leclerc in Q1. That gap, being over 0.2 behind your teammate in the first segment, is a deeply difficult one for a driver of his caliber.
He was on the back foot from final practice where he crashed the Ferrari, losing the back end into turn 9.
And he later clarified it wasn't just driver error. He said the car was bottoming out.
Can you explain what bottoming means for the listener?
Bottoming is when the car's underside physically hits the track surface. When that happens, the airflow underneath is disrupted, causing a sudden total loss of downforce. It's completely unpredictable.
And that crash, the loss of confidence and setup time, clearly carried through into qualifying.
It did. And his post-session reaction just speaks volumes. He said he had no answer for the lack of performance, but admitted to feeling an unbearable amount of anger and rage.
That is a raw, powerful statement from him.
It suggests the difficulties are far more profound than just a tricky weekend. And it's fueled this widespread fan theory that the car is heavily skewed towards Leclerc's aggressive style, and Hamilton just can't adapt to what some fans are bitterly calling the tractor Ferrari.
And the speculation about his future is intense. Some fans are suggesting that if this continues next year, he might quit mid-season before the 2026 rules even hit.
That's certainly the ultimate pessimistic view, but the sentiment is understandable. He's waiting for that 2026 regulation reset, hoping for a clean slate. For now, we're seeing a painful end to his illustrious run with this team. Starting P16, he has virtually no chance of affecting the outcome at the front.
On the completely opposite end of the spectrum is Lewis's old rival, Fernando Alonso. We must celebrate his significant statistical achievement today.
We absolutely must. His P6 qualifying spot meant he completed a clean sweep, an incredible 24-0 over his teammate Lance Stroll in every single Grand Prix qualifying this season.
24 out of 24. That is a staggering level of domination.
It truly highlights Alonso's sustained focus and ability to extract every last ounce of performance from that car day in, day out. Stroll only beat him once all year, and that was in a low-stakes sprint quali. P6 today just marks a high point for his consistency.
And it reminds us why he's such a crucial, unpredictable element in that strategic battle we've been talking about.
Absolutely.
Now, a quick detour into something that always gets the F1 fans talking, the broadcast coverage. There was a lot of commentary online about the post-qualifying content.
Yes, the focus was very much on the traditional Sky coverage, specifically the segment Ted's Notebook.
And the overwhelming critique was about duration and focus. Fans were saying it was so long and that they didn't need 30 minutes of this when they crave technical analysis.
They pointed out a distinct lack of actual focused driver interviews, which were replaced instead by vox pops, public interviews, asking random people on the street, and what were dubbed the mom-dad cams.
It seems the broadcast was leaning heavily into the human interest element rather than the raw sporting drama. One fan humorously noted they've seen Lando's mom doing heart hands for the camera too many times.
It suggests a powerful desire from the engaged audience for substance over light entertainment, especially at the climax of a championship.
And the anecdote that seemed to sum it all up was that Ted was sidetracked by some balloons at one point.
It just shows that dual nature of F1 fandom today. There's immense focus on the technical and strategic genius, but frustration when the coverage leans too heavily into the performative commercial elements. The fans want to dissect the undercut, not watch filler.
What a phenomenal qualifying session, and what a perfect strategic chessboard has been set for tomorrow. Let's just recap the key dynamics.
Verstappen is on fire with pole, but he has to use that tactical genius, the Max Master plan, to overcome the pure grid advantage of the McLarens.
McLaren is under immense pressure, both external from Max's strategy and internal, trying to manage the ambition of Oscar Piastri right behind Lando.
The strategic war starts immediately at turn 1. Those first few corners could dictate the entire outcome.
So, the decisive moments. Lando Norris needs P3 or better for certainty. Max Verstappen needs P1 and 2 cars between him and Lando to win by that narrowest possible margin.
And the race will hinge on Max's ability to control the pace perfectly and execute a major strategy call, or, conversely, a major strategy error from McLaren due to indecision or internal friction.
Right. So we've spent a huge amount of time discussing Max's tactics, slowing the field, using the mid-pack traffic. But let's leave you with a final thought, a provocation, regarding that mid-pack.
Yes, consider the risk associated with P6. We've talked about Fernando Alonso and his perfect clean sweep. His only remaining ambition may just be to maximize his own personal result.
So, if he is purely maximizing his own result from P6, pushing hard to challenge Leclerc and Russell, that push for personal gain might prevent the field from bunching up enough for Max's slow-paced strategy to even work.
Could Alonso, just by seeking to gain one position, accidentally disrupt Max's careful plan to back up the pack? Could he turn the entire DRS train implication on its head?
How much can one driver truly control a title decider when everyone else in the top 10, especially a determined and self-interested veteran like Alonso, is just maximizing their own results?
That element of chaos is the greatest vulnerability in Max's otherwise brilliant strategic plan. And it's the kind of unpredictable element that so often decides a championship.
It's going to be a stunning race. That's all the time we have for this deep dive. Thank you for joining us.
We'll see you on the other side.